Sorry, I was trying to be so quiet. I said, first of all, I want to say
There.
how happy I am to be here. I have loved ROP for it's a long love affair since the first days. It was sort of a baby in some, in terms of an idea to now, and so it's great to be here tonight, and thank you. Um, I think I would not make mine just from now until inauguration day, though I do think that this has potential violence. It has a lot of dreadful things that we'll hear announced that Trump is already doing at this point. Um, but concerns, what do we do on the ground? What kind of organizing do we do? And I think one of the main things I think in coming out of this election, as I did before it, is that we should not hunker down. You know, we may be upset, we may be scared. You know, it's not. It's a time though. You know, if you're not scared, um, I just say, your heart might not be beating for you and your people because there's stuff to be scared of. It's a time though to take action, and and with action, I think for me is at this point one of the most important things is connection and is community. How we, how we heal whatever's happening in them, how we build connections and strength within them. I think this is what will make us strong. This will not what will make us able to make real change. I think when I look at what we can do, I sort of think of three things. One is that we can defend, as Scott was saying, what we have. Like I feel like making a circle around every library and every public school. I want to hold hands around those, and I can name a dozen other things that I don't want to throw away, and I don't want to see smashed to smithereens. I want us to be actively involved. But I think to be actively involved, we've got to be in community and we've got to be connected to each other. And so and then we'd have to have strategies. So the first thing is to defend. And the second, I think, is to resist what is coming at us, that we see the tear down, that we in whatever ways that we can, whether it's sitting in the courtroom or wherever it is, everything that we can do to resist that. And then simultaneously with all of this, we have to build, you know, we have to build our base stronger. We have to build parallel institutions. We have to think of ways that we haven't been thinking. For example, I think one of the most critical things that I see in our movement is we don't have places to meet. We don't have places that are easy to meet, where there's room, where you don't have to pay for it. This is one of the things that I think ROP does a good job of, is thinking about those spaces. But the rest of the country in general, you don't have them. They've in 20 years, they've shifted just so considerably. We have to build those. So I want to give a couple of examples of taking action. One is I do work for the last 12 years. I've been part of the Southern Movement Assembly. And we started looking at this. We've been looking at it for a long time. We really started looking at it at our annual meeting, which was in the end of September. And a group of us elders really took it on and said, we have got to make some sort of plan. How are we going to move? How are we going to protect our people? How are we going to act? What is going to happen? How are we going to figure out, our pathway through all of this? And so we came up with this idea that there's a big go around of people saying what they were afraid of and what they thought we could do. And we thought, let's do something that gives us lots of things that's small in terms of action, but something that every person can do. And we work on something that you can expand your base rapidly. And we decided to do what we call the Get Ready Task Force, which was to talk with people about preparing for disasters, whether it's the disaster of Helene that had just hit the South, and terrible, terrible event, or whether it was the disaster of the elections. So we said, let's start in small groups where we get our people to have conversations around getting prepared. Start with something as simple as, how do you do a go bag? How do you do that kind of preparation with that thing that you pick up and take out the door? Because this is not a place of argument. Everybody knows that impending disaster is just out there. And so we wanted to take that and spread it larger. But that would be the starting conversation. It would not be about politics. It would be about, how do we take care of each other? How do we do this as a community? So we'd move from, how do we individually do that, but we do it in a collective setting, and then we move it as a collective idea. And then you go to the next level of, how do we protect each other if this happens? And so it's an easy way to do a number of things. And this has moved for us. I mean, we've set up a communication system for Southern organizations. We've got a media sort of thing going on. And then we have constant sharing of resources and talking with groups. We have 2 meetings a week where people can just call in and get on Zoom with us and talk about what they're doing in their towns. So what do we expect to get out of this? One, it would be able for us, getting all of these organizations to be able to create a landscape analysis of what's going on. So let's say you have 50 organizations in the South doing it. That's a lot of eyes on the landscape, a lot of reporting back. So that was one thing. The other was we developed community skills for organizing and safety, both of which dreadfully needed. And that you would end up with a much broader skilled base across the South. But the key would be how to connect these groups together. This may sound a lot like I'm just talking about the rural organizing project of what you all have already done, but it does have a few little things in it. But the connection of the social justice organizations to each other, not just individuals, but organizations and individuals. And when I say organizations, I'm talking about formations as well. That is, it doesn't have to be all nonprofits. We are moving, I think, going to move eventually from the whole nonprofit sort of setup, I hope. And so out of that, you have more strength then being built all the time through these community meetings. It's your living room, or your living room conversations. But it takes fierce work in this to set it up, as you know. And it's the communication among the groups. It's the way in which you all bring people back together each year, so they're sharing things, and they're sharing things on a constant basis, and you'll have this great communication system. So we're trying to move that on a larger scale. And I think it's going to be a good thing. And the other thing, I think, is to start working with the groups that we don't work with enough. I've been looking at you all, and it looks like you're definitely of an older age than most of the groups that I work with. I work with a lot of people who are under 30. I don't know how many you have of that. But I'll give you an example of one of the groups as part of the SMA. It's a group just for people under 30, people from 14 to 30. It's called STAY, and it stands for Stay in Appalachia. And they work with young people to give them a sense in Appalachia of, one, the history of it, and then the value of their lives and their people within it. Because Appalachia is a place that is spat upon in this country. It's seen as a place of ignorance. It's seen as a place that's, just full of Trumpites that do horrible things. And where indeed it is an extraordinary place with an extraordinary reputation. So these young people build with each other a sense of place and a sense of staying in Appalachia, staying with it, building it to be something different. And the way they do that is a lot through cultural work. They have what they call Love Fest, and they'll be about art, where they're doing art together. They have music Love Fest. They do things they have artistic, just artistic gatherings. They have a big meeting every year it's called their Summer Institute, where they do organizing skills. as well as other work. But the big thing they do is storytelling. And that's the thing that raises them up. That's the thing that links them together. And it's that linkage that I admire so much with them. And so what do you do in order to care for your people, love your people, get your people to work together? I think a great example of that is after Helene hit, they held these phone calls. It was a whole series of Zoom, weren't phone calls, they were Zoom calls. They were called Weathering the Storm, in which people could call in and tell about what was happening, in which people could describe their pain and describe what the activities they were doing. And through that, they shared skills for survival. They shared articles of clothing and food that people needed. They were able to develop strength through figuring out how they could save each other, how they could work together in these circumstances when the internet was out in so many places where there was not enough food, where virtually everything was broken. So when they would have the access to the internet, they would be connecting right back in, and then people would be able to try to connect out to them in other ways. So this is the kind of community building, I think, that is not only community in which you live, it's a community of whatever you surround yourself with, whether it's a circle of friends, whether it's a circle of coworkers, whether it's your church, whatever it is. That's where we have to start building. And then I have a whole long list of things that I think that we should do in the build part, what we should get our hands on and what we should build with.